Welcome to the Pregnancy Help Podcast. I'm Christine Grimmett here with Kathy Jerman, Heartbeat International's Director of Affiliate Services. And today we're diving into an important topic: how to weave sexual wellness into every part of your pregnancy help ministry, equipping clients to build healthier relationships. From counseling sessions and parenting classes to conversations about contraception and STD testing, sexual wellness touches nearly every aspect of the work that we do. Joining us to unpack this is Kuykendall, who has spent years equipping leaders in this space. She's currently teaching a class through Heartbeat Academy and also offers concierge consultation opportunities, so you'll want to stay tuned for more information on that. So Kathy and Lori, I'll hand it over to you now. Thanks so much for being here.
Great. Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Lori, for being here. And I know you are president of Beacon Health Education Resources, and I know that you've also served in the pregnancy help movement. So can you just tell us a little bit more about your background and what, the years you've spent in pregnancy help?
Sure. And thank you all for having me. I was first introduced to pregnancy help work in 1995, fresh out of college with my degree in community health. I had a heart for missions and wanted to serve in mission medicine in some capacity. I had a degree in health education, and prevention education work was kind of headed that direction when I came across a pink Xerox brochure about the Women's Pregnancy Center in Houston, and went to visit those ladies and hear the amazing work that was happening through the pregnancy centers way back then and still so today. Interestingly, that board and staff of that center had been praying for someone to come help them reach the girls before they need us. And they wanted to start a prevention and outreach program to the community. And I was that answer to their prayers. And it was certainly an answer to my prayers as well, a place to serve and in the health field and also in a mission and ministry environment. So that was kind of the beginning. And years later, I would serve as a pregnancy center director in North Texas and really just loved being kind of wearing all the hats that an executive director wears. And then later earned my master's in health promotion and have been focused more on the sexual integrity and sexual wellness side, both inside and outside of pregnancy centers. And I'm always happy to help heartbeat centers, especially. I love Heartbeat International and all the great work that is happening. So thanks for having me, and I love partnering and serving your centers.
Well, great. Thanks, Lori. That's wonderful. And that's very, very impressive background. And we're grateful for all the work that you do for our affiliates. So let's start right at the beginning. So when we talk about sexual wellness, what does that mean?
Well, I think the phrase that we've been using of sexual wellness speaks to that idea of wellness or health and well-being that happen around sex and sexuality. I like to talk about 5 different dimensions of health. So physical, intellectual, emotional, social, and spiritual. I'll say those again. There's 5 of them: physical, intellectual, which is like mental health, emotional health, social or relational health, and spiritual health. And when we put that in the context of sex and sexual integrity, we are talking about wholeness and a sense of completeness. And really that comes down to living according to God's good design for sex within covenant marriage with one man and one wife for one life, and how that applies across relationships and the choices we make both before and after marriage.
Great. So kind of a holistic approach to just living out God's design for sexuality and marriage. So then when a client comes into a pregnancy center, then how does that kind of play out in the counseling room or with, a staff member or client advocate and those conversations?
Well, I think it becomes a really important part of serving her needs holistically, as we've said, across those different dimensions of health, that we're looking beyond just the presenting potential pregnancy to really where she's at holistically and relationally, and able to help her make good decisions going forward. And part of that is looking at past decisions as well. So it's putting on our radar that her relationships and the decisions that she's made around sex and sexuality are a big part of what's gotten her to this moment. And so it serves her well if we can with grace and truth, address relationships and sexual wellness topics as well with her. I think that can mean something different for both pregnant and negative test clients as well. And certainly with our pregnant clients, we're wanting to think about their health and well-being for not just them, but for their babies as well. And in a context of healthy relationships, which is sometimes can be a challenge for some of our clients that they may be in an unhealthy place. So being able to provide that kind of guidance and most especially the support that enables her to have the courage to make some changes to protect her and the baby. And then we can talk a lot about the negative test client as well, where this becomes a teaching moment, an opportunity to address some of the issues that got them to this sort of scare, and how to not be back here again next week. Involves talking about relationships as well.
That's great. That makes so much sense. So it's kind of like looking at the bigger picture too. The counseling room isn't the only place in the pregnancy help movement that these conversations can take place. So it also can happen with ongoing education and different kinds of parenting classes that many of our affiliates offer. So what might that look like?
Well, I think when we're talking about client education and ongoing support for parenting clients as well, again, it's the idea of holistically caring for them and helping provide a context of an environment of support around healthy relationships. So that can mean relearning or unlearning and relearning some really important life lessons around love and respect and communication. It can get really practical. And then I think in classes also, we're doing sort of this preparation for parenting to help them be a good parent. And what I've found with the sexual wellness piece and the discussions around decisions and relationships, sometimes it helps to put a buffer there and talk more about their children and what they want for their children, even than more so than for themselves. So thinking about what do they want to do to provide that healthy environment for their children, and what kinds of ways will they talk to their kids about these topics. That can be a way to dive into preparation for parenting. And then I think some centers have an opportunity to do that preparation for marriage kind of class also, when we've got clients that are looking to be married, and we can provide that kind of guidance and support that gives that biblical foundation for covenant committed marriage and what that can look like as well. So there's lots of different ways. And one thing I like to say for all of us is we may be the only person who's asking these kinds of questions. We may be the only place that she's hearing this information. It may be all new to her, or it may be something she's heard a million times and just needs a fresh reminder of it. So yeah, we may be the only voice, but we may be another voice of reinforcement. It may be something she's heard from church or heard from parents or heard from a teacher or some other place that she didn't quite give credibility to. And then when we reinforce it within, the walls of our grace and hope that we offer relationally to clients, then I think that becomes this really neat opportunity to help her move forward and really look within and be ready to look without also about those decisions. One other thought I was thinking about earlier when we were talking about it in counseling that I think applies to classes as well is that sexual wellness and sexual integrity are beautiful ways to point to the gospel. When you're sharing about God's love and a love that cares this much about you, that he cares about this part of your life, and that he offers a really, really good plan for your whole thriving, and that points to him and to his goodness. So it can become a nice tool to point back to gospel messages as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that it's a great mentoring opportunity too, with these women and families, because, like you were talking about with their kids and helping them to think through what they want for their children. And so learning to be a good role model for them with healthy relationships too. So I think that's a really, really important part that you just pointed out. So then you mentioned STI testing earlier. So that's another area that many of our affiliates offer, is that STI testing. So then how would that work in a center with that, and those conversations that they would have when they come in for those tests?
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. One is that we have a tremendous opportunity to educate. that the general population really just doesn't know much about STDs and STIs. You can use those words interchangeably, but that there's an opportunity to educate them about their risks from bacteria and viruses, and which ones are spread through fluid and which ones are spread through skin contact. And this kind of information can be really important with STD clients. And then also the thing about the STD testing, particularly with negative clients, is it can become that place of vulnerability, kind of the place to open her heart to these kinds of conversations, because it's not just, phew, I'm not pregnant. It's, oh, I could have these other issues I need to be considered as well. So back to thinking about her holistically, and this is true for pregnant clients especially, we've got the fastest increasing, most concerning STD right now is congenital or newborn syphilis, which is a bacterial infection which should be able to be easily treated. And yet we've got over almost 300 babies dying in the country every year from congenital syphilis. So we need our pregnant moms getting the health care that they need, and the prenatal care and prevention and treatment and all of that around these issues as well. And then our negative test clients need to know that this is a real risk as well. Based on what kind of services your center is offering, you may need to have in mind that it's not just a couple of STDs that, if they pass your test, they're good to go, but really an understanding of what you're testing for and what you're not testing for, and maybe some other community, really we're looking for friendly supporters or friendly partners where we can get further testing if needed. So there's a lot of education to be done here. That's something that I've offered and helped with is that STD, STI testing piece as well, because again, just the general population doesn't have this working information, and all of it points back to sexual wellness and integrity and preserving sex for a covenant committed marriage. And for our clients that need kind of help to get back there, we work with what's called the optimal health model, thinking through moving them from higher levels of risk to low risk, ultimately to no risk in the kinds of decisions and relationships they're involved with. So yeah, there's a lot just even in STD testing.
Yeah, I think it's great that pregnancy centers, they're not only offering the practical services like pregnancy tests and ultrasounds and, the resources that you would think of from a pregnancy center, the baby supplies and diapers and that, but just it's powerful, the education and the sense of equipping and empowering these women to just make really healthy decisions for their lives and for their families and, and just following what God's design is for sexuality. So I think it's really key. And I just love that, pregnancy centers have the opportunity to do all that. So if we look beyond the pregnancy center, how can pregnancy help organizations bring sexual wellness into prevention and outreach and working with other organizations maybe in the community? How does that look?
Well, it looks different across the country in different centers, city and rural, small and big. But as I mentioned, I was hired 30 years ago to reach the girls before they need us. And that's really kind of the heart here, that as part of a responsibility or a response to the abortion issue, we know that we can work upstream and help prevent the crisis pregnancy from happening in the first place. Every pregnancy is a gift and ordained by the beautiful working hands of God. And yet there's a responsibility piece where we can help young people make healthy decisions and get out into an education and prevention and education space in our schools. And that can be public schools, it can be private schools, Christian schools, university settings. So schools and churches especially need this work. I wish more churches would come on board. I hear lots of centers say, we can't get into the churches. And there's a whole strategy around different ways to partner with churches, but we know we need the church helping us out here because of the cultural messages. And there can be other community organizations as well, like, after school clubs or service organization. You really can become kind of a speakers bureau out to the community on these topics. Some centers will develop their own curriculum, and some centers will use a national curriculum. There's a number of those available. It might depend on how much time the schools will give you in their community, and there's there's work to be done to understand your state laws and your state standards around health and sex education and be really prepared, just like we do across all of Heartbeat. We want to do things with excellence. So in the education space, we want to make sure we're offering excellent education, and there's a lot of good resources out there. And I certainly can point people to the right place depending on what the vision from within their center and what they're interested in doing.
Yeah, I love that partnership, the community collaboration with schools, with churches. And it also starts with the parents too, educating them, because the parents should be also, involved in those discussions. So when you mention churches, and I would assume you mean like youth groups and young adult type groups. So what does that look like? Do you provide, you said you have like a strategy that you can help centers with, but do you also have like an actual educational program, or you point them to some of the other ones that are already existing?
Yes, I love to point to the many excellent existing curriculum that we have, both in a public space and in a faith-based space. And again, that's going to come down to the kind of the relationship with that organization, and then how much time would be involved, how much can you use scriptures, can you not? There's a number of existing curriculum out there that I love to point people to, and some of it is kind of a marketing approach in terms of offering resources that the church or the schools may not have. And I love that you brought up parents, because we want parents to be the primary sex educators of their children. And we want that to always be a part of our messaging. So when you're going into schools or going into churches, always have a parent outreach that goes along with the student outreach as well.
That's great. I love that. And so, I mean, this has just been a really encouraging conversation, and I just love the education and the awareness that you provide for centers. And so, what I really hear you saying is sexual wellness it's not just really a program, but it's kind of a way of life for pregnancy centers, and it should just kind of be part of everything that they do and how they speak to their clients and the messaging that they put out there. Lori, if our listeners want to find out more about how you can help them, how you can, provide education maybe for their staff members or client advocates or volunteers, how would they go about doing that?
Well, before I give my own shout out, I want to shout out to the Sexual Wellness Handbook that Heartbeat published about a year ago by Dr. Joe Malone, a great resource for continuing this conversation for sure. And then to reach me, I'm at beaconhealthed.com, and I have a section there that is resources for pregnancy help centers. So you can easily reach out to me that way. There's STD training and STD slides and brochures that are available now, and happy to provide any kind of support I can.
Wonderful. And so, yeah, Christine mentioned at the beginning about our concierge consulting program that we have. And so, Lori, you are one of our concierge consultants. And so if one of our affiliates was interested in this kind of a program for their center and they just didn't even know where to begin to start, so that's something that we could help connect them to you. And then you can create kind of a custom program, right? Is that what it would look like for what kind of their needs are in their center, maybe their community, and you can customize that? Do you provide that in person or virtually, or is it kind of an ongoing coaching program or a one-day strategy session? What does that look like?
Well, thanks for pointing that out. The concierge consulting starts with a call to Heartbeat, and they kind of set you up with me to be able to offer, really we would do an assessment first, kind of to be able to assess and then address, as I say, assess kind of what your needs are, what the resources are, the opportunities are, and then put together a plan for either a training or an equipping for staff or training teachers or evaluating your curriculum that you already have. There's medical accuracy reviews and content reviews. It could look different ways. And yes, that could be virtual or in person as well. Both of those options are there for us, and it'd be fun to work together.
Great. Lori, this has been a really, really great conversation. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention maybe that I didn't ask about, or is there any other part of the program that you offer that we didn't touch on? Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I love how you painted this as an opportunity, a beautiful opportunity that we have to give them truth that they may not already know in an environment of grace and support, which they also may not already know, depending on their circumstances. And I think I would just ask that we would have courage and to do that, to bring up these conversations. I think sometimes we're afraid, oh, we might hurt her feelings or we don't want to offend her. And yet we may be the only person that is bringing this truth and hope. Everything about the message of sexual wellness and God's good design is a message of hope that He has a better way. And our clients are hurting for that very often. They haven't heard it, or they haven't applied it, and they need the grace to get back on track, or it could look several different kinds of scenarios. But for their sake and the sake of their children, I think we will have the courage to get comfortable ourselves talking about this topic in a way that invites them into a better story.
Yeah, that's great. I think, like you said, it's a tough conversation sometimes to have, but just, encouraging them to have the courage and the bravery to speak up and speak that truth and grace and love to our clients. So that's what it's all about. So Lori, thank you again for being here with us today on the Pregnancy Help Podcast. We really enjoyed this conversation. And Christine, I think I will turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you, Kathy and Lori. This is all such good news. It's so amazing to think of how the pregnancy help organizations are positioned so that they can reach these clients who are desperately seeking help and information on how to build those healthy relationships. And you have it here. You have it ready to train the pregnancy center staff and volunteers so that they can bring this good news to their clients. So thank you, Lori, for all of your work in the pregnancy help world and for partnering with Heartbeat. If you're interested in Lori's class, it's an 8-week session, and I'll add some information on that in the show notes. It's a really great program, and that link will give you some dates if you would like to add that to your calendar and enroll in one of Lori's classes. And again, we have those concierge consultations, and I'll add some information on that as well. Be sure to subscribe to the Pregnancy Help Podcast to get more information on how we can help support you. And with that, we thank you for listening to this episode of the Pregnancy Help Podcast.